The first decision a livestock producer here has to make is, I'm going to have to source some feed to maintain my cattle if I want to keep my cattle, or if I don't have that capability, I'm going to have to liquidate my herd.
The first hay cuttings here were probably the best hay that we'd ever made quality-wise. A lot of protein in the mixture. It was just a great start, and now it's wasted away to near nothing.
We haven't really had significant rain since April, and here it is 1st of August, so you can imagine when you don't get rain like that, why it's pretty tough.
Dry.
Yeah, they're dry.
The ponds and the creeks are dry.
There's nothing in them.
Yeah, there's some actually years ago, they swampy areas, but they've through the years kind of developed creeks that I did not see go dry in 1988, and they're dry today.
We had a lot of, basically a week over 110 here, heat indexes over 120, soil surface temperatures 130 to 150, so we basically baked during June and July.
Desperation has become commonplace in farm states where the historic drought continues to tighten its grip. In Illinois, areas decimated by extreme drought expanded to more than 81% in the last week.
As you can see right here in the second row, you got a blank, a blank, a blank, a little ear that's not going to survive the corn head, blank, 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 and just go on down the row. It's all blank. Basically, when you look at this corn, what I mean an ear that's not going to survive the corn head, that little ear right there, what little corn's on that, yeah, will yield something, but unless you're chopping it for silage, it's not going to make it through a corn head. It's just going to go on down and just shell off.
Dan Byers operates a forage harvesting and bagging business with his father, Ron, near Berwick, Illinois. He runs 5 crews to keep up with the current high demand for silage.
Or significantly earlier. I just started my first job on July 20th, and I never in my life have I started chopping silage that early. How much new work, it's significant, very significant. From a combination of guys that have always chopped silage, wanting to do more because, their feed supply is either A, down because the hay was worse, or B, they're already feeding, hay or whatever to their cows because grass is short.
According to USDA, roughly 3/5 of the nation's rangeland and pastures are considered to be in poor to very poor shape.
Ostensibly, there is nothing in the pastures. Yeah, you might have a little bit of fescue head out there, but the cattle are not eating it. It's so dry and brittle. It's worse than the straw that if they were to eat it. And it's down to nubbings. Yeah, we've seen one pasture that actually the cattle have been off for 6 weeks or 8 weeks, but there was no regrowth. What's particularly devastating is the fact that guys have been feeding hay since June, and they don't have the stocks, the hay to get them through probably past November, end of November, beginning of December. They just don't know where to go.
Teresa Steckler is a beef specialist for University of Illinois Extension. She says in addition to finding alternative feed sources, water supplies are a big concern.
Where we've had to use ponds or creeks as water sources, some of those are drying up. Right here next to us, we've got a pond that's almost dried up. We've had to run some water lines, and we're going to be putting in public water access to those cattle, and we're having to do that in 3 separate locations here on the farm.
Mostly with the kids there, it's doubled their workload with the hauling of the water. They have to haul about 3 loads a day with that, and we also have to check on the cattle a lot more with the heat and make sure they're not heat stressed, and if they are, we have to bring them up and try to cool them down.
According to Kansas City Fed economists, most of the burden of the drought has come through higher crop prices, which they say will persist as long as crop inventories remain low.
The drought is so widespread. The food choices are feeding expensive feedstuffs. Hay is being transported and trucked in. There's not enough hay for the livestock here, as there isn't around much of the Midwest. So your options are pay the exorbitant high-priced feed costs, obviously because of the corn futures market,
All of the grains to fatten out calves have gotten very expensive. You know, it was, I bought feed this week, it was $293 a ton, where normally you're paying $156 a ton. Hay costs, round bales are now $105. Normally they're 30 or 40, and it's just a supply and demand function. The cattle sell-off that's occurring right now across the Midwest and most of the cattle belt is a result of the lack of feed and the high cost of feed, and it's just prohibitive to a lot of folks staying in the cattle business.
Here in the next 2 or 3 weeks, I'm going to have to decide what I want to do in order to stay in the business, and I may have to cut my herd again, and if I cut my herd down in half again and keep 10 core cows for the genetics, I can probably get through to spring, but that's going to severely hurt income potential later.
Just 60, 90 days ago, cattle prices were at all-time highs. They have dropped tremendously. So if you're forced to liquidate right now, you're doing so at a bad time from a market standpoint, because the cattle prices that we were getting, they're just not there now. But I'm afraid that a lot of those individuals are going to take this opportunity to get out of the business. I hope they don't, because our cow herd is dwindling across the United States as it is, and I have fears about that. As demand for beef grows around the world, I have concerns that we're going to have enough beef to meet that need.
What promised to be a very lucrative year for farmers and ranchers alike has turned into a harvest of discontent.
The hope is we're going to always, we're going to set the next world record on corn yields or whatever, so in our own minds, I guess. But we're not, we don't plan for a disaster from the standpoint of, we go out and say, well, this isn't going to work. So we started off at a good year, things went downhill. From my standpoint, and a lot of the farmers I know and I work with, if they've taken the time in these last few really good years to bulletproof their balance sheet, if they've got good working capital, if they bought up on their crop insurance, my comment's been, it's a spectator sport. We're just waiting for it to get over. We've lost the game. We're just waiting for the last whistle to blow, and then we'll start on next year.
For Market to Market, I'm Laurel Bauer-Bergmeyer.